Final score with another great interview tonight, guys. ECU fans, everybody remembers the 91 Peach Bowl team, the big win against NC State, the way that season went, the way it finished. Couldn't ask for a better season. Probably my favorite ECU team of all time was the 91 team. And I've been blessed and honored to be able to interview a lot of these guys so far. You know, I've had Luke Fisher, Greg Grandison, Zime Kumalai, Greg Gardiel, Deion Johnson, and I'm adding another name to that list tonight. One of the defensive stalwarts of that team, I guess they called him, what I've been reading, the other linebacker, Mr. Ken Burnette. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ken Burnette.
Thank you, Stevie. I appreciate you having me, and you're exactly right. It's the other linebacker. That's the way I was known, affectionately.
Yeah. I mean, but you look at that, and before we get started with the interview, you look at that defense. Everybody talks about that offense, but you guys have, and I've talked about this with a lot of the guys that I've interviewed. You guys had a solid defense. I mean, I talk about that Peach Bowl game when you guys were down 34-17. Yeah, the offense had to score, but you guys had to make some stops too.
Yeah, we did. You know, we had a kind of a bend don't break mentality and tried to limit the big plays. So, you know, we just it's a great group of guys play together and enjoyed playing one another, and you know, we found some success out there.
Oh, definitely found success. So you're originally from North Carolina. You're still living in North Carolina, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so when you were in school, was football the only sport you played, or you played all three sports, or?
In high school?
Yeah, in high school, yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. So coming up, I was football, basketball, and a baseball guy when I was younger. But when I got to high school, that flipped over to track because I thought that maybe running track would help me increase my speed, which I needed to do. So
right.
Our football coach was a track coach. Yeah. So our football coach was a track coach, and he strongly encouraged that you played some spring sport, whether it be baseball or track, and so I figured track was probably the best suit for me.
Well, when did it hit you that football was going to be your ticket to the next level?
Well, football was my love from the start, really, from the very first time I played. I kind of played basketball and baseball and ran track to pass the time, right, and get to the next season. But I enjoyed those sports as well, but football was always my first love. So, you know, any opportunity to continue playing, I was open to taking that.
So ECU, of course, everybody knows the history. You go to ECU. What other schools were after you to play at the next level?
You know, that's an interesting question. As you know, I walked on to East Carolina.
Right.
There was some small schools. Lenore, Mars Hill, Western showed a little interest, but no real solid offers out of anybody. But I felt like being the know-it-all 18-year-old that was full of myself as I was, that you know, I could play at the next level. So I kind of sought out an opportunity, and there was a connection with my high school coach at East Carolina, so things just worked out there.
Well, a lot of people don't know, but you did not come in originally as a linebacker. You were a defensive back, right?
That's correct. So coming out of high school, I weighed about 185 or so, and got to campus there. And so when I don't know if they still do it this way, but back when we came in, the freshmen came in by themselves for like 3 days, and so they evaluate pretty much everyone on both sides of the ball. So everybody played two positions there for the first 3 days of camp, and they made the decision of, okay, is this an offensive guy or defensive guy, at least the best we can tell. So obviously at 185, that's nowhere near linebacker size, particularly at college level. So they're like, this guy's a DB. They probably didn't have any place to put me, so they just stuck me at DB.
Well, they ended up making a good choice. I mean, you know, you put on some pounds. And what about your first impressions of Greenville? Hot.
It was so hot down there. I grew up in the mountains, and if it got to be 85 degrees up there, we thought it was about to melt. And so when I came to Greenville, that was a tough transition for me to get used to the heat. In particular, going out during camp 2 days there in August, it was a battle. I mean, it probably took me 3 years to get to the point where it didn't just kill me to get out in that heat. But yeah, the first thing about Greenville that hit me was the heat.
Yeah, the heat. I just did an interview with a guy that played at Notre Dame, and he was from California, and he said the first winter he was there was like with the wind chill night. And one of the days it was 70 below there, so he was calling his mama to tell him to come home. He wanted to come home. I said, yeah. So that was a big cultural shock for him. So you get there, Coach Art Baker. What was it like playing for Coach Baker?
Coach Baker's a great guy. Really had a good relationship with Coach Baker, and he actually is the one that put me on scholarship initially. So, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Coach Baker. Good guy. He probably got maligned a little bit in the press and maybe in some circles there, but from a player's perspective, you couldn't ask for a better coach. I mean, he cared for the guys. He did his best to put us in a position to win, but he was a player's coach. He was a guy that we knew that he had our back and that he had our best interests at heart. And so, good guy from my perspective, and I enjoyed playing for in those couple of years. Yeah,
there's a pretty good story about you getting a scholarship, because he pretty much made you a promise. If I read this right, that if you wanted the travel squad, he was going to put you on scholarship. Is that correct?
That's really a kind of a neat story. I don't think Coach Lewis did this, but at the end of spring, Coach Baker met with every player individually and talked about kind of your goals for next year and what he expected out of you, and you shared with him, kind of what you wanted to do. And I was so nervous with that meeting, and I was sweet mates with Carl Carney. And Carl said, we were talking about it and what I should say and how I should say it and stuff like that. And I said, man, I want a scholarship. And he said, well, you tell him that. And I was like, well, okay. So when I got in the meeting with Coach Baker and we were talking and the time came up, he said, well, Ken, what are your goals? And I said, Coach, I want to earn a scholarship. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, if you come in next year in camp and you make the travel team, he said, I'll give you a scholarship. And I said, fair enough. So that was that summer's probably the hardest I'd worked. I wanted to ensure that I was on that bus, on that plane come that fall, and sure enough, I was. And he was a man of his word, and we signed the paperwork. So it was a great thing for me.
Oh yeah, I was reading that story. I figured that was a great story there. You get to your sophomore year, you're starting at linebacker, right? And then you have an injury, tear your MCL. How frustrating was that when you're just now getting into the rhythm of the game now?
It was very frustrating on a lot of levels. We had some coaching turnover at some position places and some coordinator places, and so every time that happens, you kind of have to prove your worth again and earn your stripes again. And so, I'd done that, and I put myself in a position to be playing, starting, and then the injury occurs, and that may be the lowest I've been in my career there, because it just tore me up that all that hard work and effort, and here I was, and now I was watching from the sidelines. But it's like life. Things happen. You got to put it behind you and move on. And so once I took a look at it from a little bit of a distance after a week or two, I was like, okay, well, let's work, get back, and try to get our spot back.
Yeah. Then they move you from inside linebacker to outside linebacker, and you were kind of out of position there. I can't imagine. I played football in high school at a small private school, and I was kind of an undersized. Well, I was an undersized guy, but I played on the defensive line. I was too small. I was too slow to be a back, but I was really too fast to be a defensive lineman. But then a guy gets hurt, and they moved me to linebacker, and I felt like, whoa, well, I'm out of position here, which I enjoyed it, but I was out of position. I can't, that's a frustrating feeling when you're out of your comfort zone. I imagine that was for you too.
Very much so. I had from the fall of my true freshman year when I put on some weight and they moved me down to inside linebacker on the scout team. I'd been inside linebacker the entire time, so I had never played that stand-up technique on the outside, never played over a tight end, and it was different. So I did feel out of place. But my stance on that was, if it gives me an opportunity to get on the field, exactly, I'll do it. And if I can help the team in some form or fashion, I'm happy to do it. So it gave me a chance to play.
Yeah.
And so I was fine with that. So I don't know how well I did out there because I was kind of learning on the fly, but I did the best I could, and then it worked out all right.
So, Coach Baker leaves, Bill Lewis comes in. What was it like? What was your first impressions of Coach Lewis?
Our very first meeting with Coach Lewis was a tone setter. I'll tell you that. It was in, I think it was in a building on campus, if I believe. It seems like it was in one of the auditoriums on campus. And so it was like 6 p.m. we're having a meeting, and at 6 p.m. those doors were shut, and that meeting started. And there was a couple guys that were late, and they wouldn't let them in. And he was very clear on his expectations of us, that nobody would outwork us, nobody would out-plan us, out-prepare, and that we would do things his way. And so it's like, you sit up straight, you take those sunglasses off, you take those hats off, this is the way it's going to be from now on. So it was an eye-opening experience, but I like that. I love structure, I love discipline, and so it was my kind of guy, so I was excited about what was ahead for us there.
Yeah, definitely. Then your junior year, you guys go 5-6, but y'all are gaining some traction. You got some guys out there. You got a Jeff Blake that's coming along. Robert Jones is coming along. You guys are building a good team. We mentioned this at the first part of the show. We're talking about Robert Jones. What was it like playing alongside Robert Jones, being the quote other linebacker?
It was awesome. Robert, great guy, great teammate, very good friend of mine, and not that we spend a lot of time together today, but we do talk on occasion. But to play beside somebody of that caliber, number one, it was an honor, especially given the career he had after he left East Carolina. But number two, I knew that I could just play my game, and he could make up for my mistakes. So it took a lot of pressure off of me, and just let me do my thing and let him cover the rest. And, I mean, he was a man among boys out there. So really enjoyed those couple of years that we played together.
Yeah, definitely, went on to have a stellar career with the Cowboys. I think 2 Super Bowl championships, and just a great guy. And, these sons of him are doing pretty good. Zay did pretty good at ECU, so maybe we'll see another Super Bowl come to the Jones family for long. Now, one thing I always liked about ECU, I've been a fan since '83. But one thing I always liked about ECU, and I hear a lot of the guys that I interview talk about, one of the things that drew them to ECU was they always played top competition. You played the Florida States, the Penn States, the Georgia. I mean, you had one year you played at Georgia, and teams like that. That was one of the things that drew them to that. Was that one of the things that drew ECU to you, or drew you to
Absolutely.
ECU? Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned earlier that my high school coach had a connection. Don Powers,
I remember,
who was the defensive backs coach, DB coach at East Carolina, had come from Western Carolina. And Western's not too far from where I grew up, and our high school used to go over there every summer for their football camp for a week. And so my high school coach and Don Powers were familiar with one another. I wouldn't say they were very close friends, but they knew one another. So that's what got the connection started. But once I went down and I took a look around, I'm like, this is big time deal, and that's what I wanted. I wanted an environment where I could play against the best, get an opportunity to play on TV, get an opportunity to play in a bowl game. One of my goals was always to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I never made that, but I did get in the pages there one time.
That's right.
When we played against Pittsburgh there, but absolutely a draw. You know, to know that you're going to travel around, you're going to play the best teams in the country, Miami, Florida State. You know, we played them all, and so yeah, that was a huge draw for me back in the time because I felt like I needed an opportunity to prove myself as a player. You know, these recruiters didn't believe in me, and so I'm going to prove myself on the biggest of stages, and that gave me the opportunity to do it.
Yep, definitely. So your senior year, I mean, there's a lot of expectations going around about you guys. You guys were like 5 and 6 the year before, but did you guys feel like going into the season that okay, we've got something special here. We need to make this work. This is a good team here. We can do something.
You know, I would say we were, and this is me speaking. I can't speak for anybody else, but I was cautiously optimistic. I knew we had a lot of experience, had a lot of good talent. But, you know, I knew we needed some things to go our way. But when the switch kind of flipped for me is that when we went up to Illinois that opening weekend and, you know, really should have won that game. And coming out of there, I think to a man that got on that bus and went back to the airport was like, we got something special here. And we built on that, you know, and then just week after week, we found a way to win, and it just took on a life of its own. It was an amazing run that just has so many great memories with it.
Yeah, that Illinois game, and I've talked to the ones I've talked to from that team. You know, the way I say it sounds bad, but I don't think it's hard to say it was a good loss, but you guys definitely should have won that game, I think, because except for a bad call at the end of the game, or a BS call. I can't say what I want to call it, but you guys, you know, to come from behind like you did and get within striking distance and to have the game, you know, pretty much in your favor, you know, at Illinois. Illinois was a big-time program then, and you guys came back and should have beat them. But one of the things I hear a lot is how important the next week was. You play a Memphis team that had just beat USC. And to get the win over them, I know that really, and I mean, as you know, the Illinois was what I call a good loss because it made you, it got y'all believing, okay, we can play with anybody here. And then the Memphis win just went to another level after that, beating somebody that just beat USC. I know that was a good feeling, saying, okay, we got something here after that Memphis win.
You know, it was, and it's interesting you say that because I felt the same way. I don't think anybody discussed it, but, you know, in looking back, that was like, you know, it's probably good we lost that game because if we'd have won, who knows what our mindset would have been coming out of there. But you're right. I remember, if I recall correctly, and it's been many moons ago, and I've been hitting the head way too many times, but it seems like that was over Labor Day weekend, and maybe they played that game on a Monday or something like that, the USC-Memphis game. I can't remember, but I do remember watching the film. I remember watching the film, and I'm like, oh, man, that was uncharacteristic of a Memphis football team. And so I'm like, now we're like, okay, we got to take this thing serious. We got to get our mind right on this thing. And we did. So there's two things really that came together there. The loss to Illinois that we felt like we should have won, and we believed we were the better team. And then with the sense of urgency created by Memphis beating USC, we're like, okay, well, we got to turn the page here and get ready for this thing. So I think those two things came together and really kind of launched us into that season.
It definitely did. You get a win over UCF, and then the South Carolina game. The South Carolina, you know, I had always come in there, and ECU had a hard time with them, but you guys pretty much dominated them. The score, it was not as close as the score, 31-20 win, but did you feel pretty good about beating South Carolina that way?
You know, absolutely. And it's funny you say that because there are times in previous years where, quite frankly, we just got manhandled by people. And it just felt like we were playing against a different level of competition. But the switch was flipped that day. And it was like we had the upper hand. I mean, well, we did obviously have the upper hand, but it was like we were the men and they were the boys that day. And we just pretty much physically did whatever we wanted to with them. It was just an unbelievable feeling because they had our number.
Yeah, they
and
had.
we took some tough losses down in Columbia, and they had a running back. I remember he ran all over us, robbed the board. I never will forget. I mean, he about killed me down there a year or two before, and so we were ready, and we just completely dominated them physically that day, and it was an awesome win in Brooklyn right there.
Yeah, definitely. So you get next week you get a win over Akron. You pretty much dominated 56-20. Then you head to the Carrier Dome, and this is one of those. There's a lot of games that season that were pretty much pivotal games, I say, for ECU. But going to Syracuse, played number 15 Syracuse at their place, and coming from behind and getting a 23-20 win in the Carrier Dome. I remember watching the highlights come across, and I was just sitting there like, they're going to win. I listened to it on the radio, and I was like, they're going to win this game. They're going to come back and win this game. How big was that? I mean, that moved you guys into the top 25. So that's another one of those pivotal games for y'all. It really got y'all believing. Like, I hate to say it like we believe, but that pretty much started the we believe with the fans and stuff.
You know, it did. That really kind of legitimized what we were doing and what we were about that year. I mean, it was a playoff type or a bowl game type atmosphere in there as far as the excitement around what was going on our sideline. And I remember we got that win, and we flew back to Greenville or flew back to Kinston where we come into, and all these people were in the airport, and none of us had ever experienced anything like that before, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And we were like, holy cow, this thing's taking on a life of its own here. And from that point on, we was like, yeah, this is a great ride we're on here. We just need to stay focused and enjoy it because it had taken on a life of its own then, and it was awesome. I mean, the fans were unbelievable.
Yeah, everybody I've talked to mentions that trip back to the Kinston Airport and how shocked they were at how many people were there, because I think it was Zime that said, you know, we figured there'd be maybe a couple of people there waiting, and then the pilot comes across and said, you guys need to look at all these people that are out here for y'all. And that's a great. I love hearing that because that just made everybody. That game made everybody believe. Okay, ECU's got something special. Like you said, it legitimized what ECU was doing that year. And like you said, you move into the top 25. You move into number 20. But you another Big East team comes to Ficklin, Pitt. And I will say this: one of my favorite games in ECU history, because I think that was one of the loudest times I've heard in Ficklin Stadium, was when that 2-point conversion, Jeff Blake scores on that 2-point conversion to take the lead. I just to get you, first of all, could you believe how loud it was in that place?
You know, I couldn't. It's kind of funny, you know, on the field. You don't notice a lot of things, and sometimes the noise it's just noise, you know, and you can't tell. But that day it was crazy, and one of the funniest things about that is my brother was there. My family came to most every game. My brother was there, and he had a camcorder, and he was filming some of it from the stand.
Wow.
And there at the end, when we scored, I mean, it was bananas up there where he was. You couldn't. The camera was shaking everywhere, and there was just people in chaos. It was hilarious. But that was an awesome game. I don't know if I'm sure these guys have shared with you, but maybe by the second, third, fourth week of the season, Coach Lewis started printing up these shirts for us every week. And when we come in the locker room, it'd be hanging on our locker. And so one of them was, you know, we had the I Believe shirt, and that may be in the Pitt game. We had a shirt that had a target on it, and, you know, we become the hunted. I don't remember exactly what it said, but I kept them all, you know, and I've still got them.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely.
And so that was really cool. But I remember us coming out of that Pitt game, and I've got pictures of me and Stephen Brady, my roommate, coming out of the locker room. We got that I Believe shirt on, you know, 'cause that's about the time it took off, and and started with a life of its own. So that was an awesome environment that day in Pickland.
Yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite ECU games of all time. But you guys move up to 17th, beat Tulane by 10, beat up on Southern Miss, which was a big ECU rival back then. Southern Miss was always a tough ride for ECU, but you guys took care of 48-20, and then the Virginia Tech
game. You got to pull up on me, little Steven. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Could you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I would say the Southern Miss game, which is always a tough one. They were a big rival for ECU back then. You guys get them 48-20, and then the Virginia Tech game comes, which all the guys I talked to talk about how tough of a game that was at Virginia Tech. Did you feel the same way about that?
I did. It's funny to step back to Southern Miss real quick. You're right. They were a hard-nosed team, back-and-forth rivalry every year for them guys. But that was one time where it was just another complete domination. I mean, we just went all over them. Everything we did was right. Everything they did, they couldn't get anything going. So that was a great win we had down there in Hattiesburg. But then coming back to Virginia Tech, then we're in bowl talks, and the pressure starts ratcheting up a little bit, and now we're kind of the hunted, even though that I'm sure they were favored going in. But that Virginia Tech's always big, tough, physical, and we knew we had our work cut out for us up there. And that game just was a back and forth kind of dogfight game. I remember Fred Granson had that pick, ran it all the way back. Made just awesome plays like that going on up there. And, but yeah, tough game, tough environment to play in, but awesome to get a win up there at Lane Stadium.
Yeah, like you say, the bowl talks have already started, and the pressure's on. And you guys move up after the Virginia Tech game to number 13. You go to Cincinnati to finish out the regular season. You guys get a 30-19 win there. So bowl talks have started, and one of the things I say, and I go back to it every time I interview one of you guys from that year. I just remember the '83 team losing 3 games by a combined 15 points to all the Florida schools like Florida State, Miami, and Florida, and not getting a bowl game that year. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, these guys are 10-1. And I was just worried. I was like, they're not going to get the respect they deserve just because, they're ECU. And I was just like, if they're not playing in a New Year's Day bowl game, then they've been disrespected. Did you guys feel like that?
Absolutely. First off, you're 100% correct. The '83 team got robbed, and that's a tragedy for sure. But, growing up, New Year's Day was the day to have a bowl game. If you were not on a New Year's Day bowl, then it was just kind of an also-ran. And so there was this looming fear, or however you want to call it, maybe doubt in the back of my mind that they would really take us seriously and really give us the opportunity. I wanted the New Year's Day bowl game, and I'm sure all of us did. But I had this looming thought that we're going to get this December 15th bowl game in someplace nobody wants to go. But when they announced that it was the Peach Bowl, which is January 1st, and on top of that, it was North Carolina State. I mean, it could not have worked out better, and everybody was excited as they could be about that opportunity.
Yeah, talk about that, and I don't know how much you were into that state rivalry. How much? Talk about that state rivalry, because I think, were you there when the game that season, when the last game that had been played at NC State when ECU beat them? Were you there that season?
Yeah, that was my freshman year. So me, Shane Hubble, and Stephen Brady were sitting in Scott Dorm listening to that game on the radio because we were all redshirted and I just traveled up to Raleigh. So I was there for that and kind of experienced, the preparation and the mindset going into that week and the intensity involved in the rivalry. So we kind of knew what that was about, at least the older guys did, and really just looking forward to kind of renewing that thing and settling it down there in Atlanta.
Yeah, and another thing we always talk about, before that Peach Bowl game started on ESPN, I know you've seen it, the whole interviews with the state players, the disrespect. Did y'all feel like y'all were being disrespected by them?
It's kind of funny. The whole week they put on all these events for the teams, and it's a great environment. But all week we got the sense that they were like, we shouldn't be here. We should be somewhere else, and we were just soaking it in. I mean, all the guys on our team were just enjoying the heck out of everything we did and just drinking it in. And the state guys, we kind of got the sense that, we've done this before and we have to do it down here with East Carolina, and we should be in a better bowl game. That's kind of the sense we got from them. And it was funny because they have these competitions every day. Whether it's eating chicken wings or whatever it was, and we whipped them in everything we did all week. I mean, we were undefeated coming into Saturday morning for that bowl game.
Well, talk about the atmosphere at the Peach Bowl that day when you come out of the tunnel. I mean, talking to Zyme, he was like, it was just unbelievable. But it had to be electric when you came out of that tunnel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got chill bumps right now thinking about it, and that's what I got coming out of the tunnel was chill bumps. I mean, it was that whole 70, 75,000, whatever it was, people, and it was packed, and everybody was rowdy, and it was half red and half purple, and you couldn't have asked for a better environment than that. It was awesome. Best environment we played in, hands down. Yeah,
that was one of those days that my cousin, he used to be a manager for the ECU ball team back in the early '80s, and at his house watching this and having, especially in that third quarter, state fans were just calling and hanging up. And when it got to be 34-17, kind of down, but we weren't out. But what was the feeling like when you're down 34? And you have to mention this. You ended up breaking your arm in that game.
Yeah, so right about midway through the second quarter, just a freak thing, really. I was on a blitz. The offensive guard kind of just shot his arm out at me at the last minute, and his elbow hit me right in my forearm, just shattered it. Freak thing, wouldn't happen again in 1,000 tries probably. But so midway through the second quarter, I'm in the locker room. They're like, "Yeah, this thing's a mess, and so you're done." And so I showered, put the street clothes on, and was back out for the second half. But once we went down, I don't think anybody felt like it's over, because just the way our season had been, we felt like, we got it. It's in there. It's just a matter of time here, and then just keep pounding. And we did. So, I don't think anybody felt like, oh, crap, here we go, because that's not the way the whole season had gone, and we had made it through 10 already, so we were ready for that one, too.
Well, to be able to come back from 17 down in a quarter, you couldn't have been like, oh, it's over. You couldn't have gave up. But you go up, of course, everybody remembers the pass from Jeff Blake, Luke Fisher, the went ahead. But then the game's not over. State goes down the field, attempts like a 40-some yard field goal. Now, I asked them, cause some of the defensive players, of course, were on the field, but with you on the sideline, did you watch the field goal, or could you not watch it?
I did. I watched it. I was standing right beside Lee Workman. We were standing up on the bench, and I couldn't believe they were playing for a tie. I thought that was pretty weak on their part, but whatever. That's what they decided to do. But absolutely, I watched it, and I watched that thing sail wide, and I was elated when it did.
That had to make you forget about your broke arm for a little while, at least.
It did. Absolutely did.
Yeah, that was probably. I can't imagine the feeling, beating one of your big rivals and having the season go the way it is and end the way it did. Had to be a pretty great feeling, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking back on that, and just really that season, my entire career at East Carolina. I mean, if you were writing a book, you couldn't have written it any more special than that whole thing turned out for Ken Burnette. I mean, that was just the cherry on top to finish out our senior year like that, and number 9 in the country, and winning a bowl game, getting New Year's Day bowl game, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was just a storybook thing from beginning to end for me and for a lot of those guys. So, yeah, just awesome memories there.
All right. Okay, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but I got a few more questions for you, a few quick answers, I think, here, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
Biggest influence, sports influence?
Oh, my goodness. Dan Marino.
Dan Marino. Now, do you watch more NFL, or are you more of a college football guy?
I'm a college football guy now. I'm a college football guy.
Okay, so I know you.
I tolerate the NFL, but I love college football.
Yeah, I'm a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and when you said Dan Marino, it brings back bad memories.
Sorry about that.
Because the Steelers had Marino right in their backyard and didn't draft him, and they would let him pass by.
Yep.
And, I mean, I just look at the guy. No offense to the guy they drafted that year, but gosh knows, we could have had Marino. Anyway, toughest opponent.
That's a toss-up. I'm going to say Virginia Tech or South Carolina, just because they were both always so physical, always so big, strong, and fast at every position. There may be another one in there if I had time to think about it, but it'd be a toss-up between those two right off the top of my head.
Got to get best locker room story.
Oh, I don't know if we can share all this.
I got you. Or to just give the PG rated ones, I guess.
Well, there was a player not to be named was strongly exerted himself in the weight room and maybe should have gone to the restroom before he went to the weight room. And so he thought that was so funny that he began to chase everybody around with the mess that had occurred.
Oh, Lord, I can't imagine that. All right, last question. Well, not my last question, but last of this quick question. What do you miss most about not being on a football team, not being at ECU?
I miss the fellowship the most. Fellowship of the team.
No doubt about that. So, I know you follow ECU football. Do you get to many games?
We try to get to one or two a year. The boys, I've got two boys, and their schedules make it tough sometimes. But I love coming back to East Carolina and spending time with the staff and coaches and players and old guys that I played with. It's always great to get back to Greenville.
What's your feeling? What's your feeling on the outlook for this season? You know, we got a new Coach Houston there. What's your feeling on the outlook of it?
I love Coach Houston. I think it's an awesome hire. I don't know how long it's going to take. I think we'll see a marked difference on the field this year just in the way we play. I don't know if the results will be there this year, but I feel certain that the results will come. Maybe not this year, but certainly in the years to come. I think we hired the right guy. He's got the right mentality to beat East Carolina, and we'll get there. So I'm looking for good things.
Yeah, I am too. I'm really excited about it. I hope to get to a couple of games this year. Maybe I'll bump into you there or something. You say you got two boys. Are they following in your footsteps?
Neither one of them. They're lacrosse and basketball guys.
That lacrosse. There's a lot of guys that are going with lacrosse these days. I see a friend of mine up around the Charlotte area, well, actually closer to South Carolina line. His kids play football and lacrosse. But that lacrosse is really coming on strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great game. If it had been around when I would have been younger, it would have probably had my attention too. But that's their thing. So they're lacrosse basketball guys.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Can't thank you enough for doing it. It's been great. Anytime I can talk to one of you guys on this team is awesome. But really love hearing your stories, especially about that 1991 year. Can't thank you enough for doing this. Really appreciate it, Mr. Burnette.
Hey, Steve, anytime. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. We're going to let you go, but take care of yourself. Maybe I'll bump into you at the ECU game. Hope to be able to get some of these defensive guys that I've interviewed, get a picture with them or something like that. But take care, Mr. Burnette. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Guys, that's Greg Burnette. That's Ken Burnette, excuse me. I got so many Gregs I've interviewed. Ken Burnette. Ken Burnette on the final score, guys.